Hi, my name is Richard Muse. I'm the executive steward for CASC-OR, and I wanted to have a kind of an introduction to stewarding. What are stewards? What is the role that they play? And I wanted to make it in a rather generic kind of way, because we have a lot of disciplines under CASC-OR, and apologies. Anyway, so I wanted to make this kind of a generic because CASC-OR has a lot of different disciplines, including time attack, road race, ice race, and slalom. And stewarding is kind of it is a common theme throughout all of those. And in fact, we've actually taken all of the context for stewarding, and it's not in the discipline regulations. It's in our general competition regulations. That means it's common to all of the disciplines within CASC-OR. And we wanted to have this opportunity to provide, just one second. So the stewarding is in the general competition regulations, and it's because it's common to all of the disciplines that we have in CASC-OR. And so what I wanted to do is have an opportunity for groups that we don't normally interact with, such as the time attack, ice racing, and slalom groups, to be able to have this introduction to what are stewards. And so what I'm going to do today is have some introductions. I've said I'm the executive steward for CASC-OR. Talk a little bit about who are the stewards, the duties of the stewards, what are they authorized to do. Talk a little bit about the general competition regulations, which is really where all of the meat of what a steward is. Talk a little bit about some of how the stewards are going to interact with the different disciplines, a little bit about sort of the steward hearings that we have, and finally, a little bit about how to apply for a license. So the first thing is I want to talk about stewarding is something that is worldwide through all of motorsports. And in fact, it's actually talked about in the FIA International Sporting Code. So the FIA is the International Motorsports Governing Body, and they have their own sporting code that is used, and each of the countries or territories will have their own national sporting body. In Canada, it's ASN Canada. And so every country and territory in the world is going to have their own ASN, which is delegated authority from FIA at the international level down to the national level. Within Canada, ASN Canada then delegates authority down to each of the regions. There are 5 regions: Atlantic Canada, Quebec. Here in Ontario, we have CASC-OR, and there are other territories as well. And but the idea, the concept of what stewards are is the same throughout all of these different levels of motorsports governance. And stewarding is one of the most important officials that we have in motorsports. They are the key to upholding the sporting integrity of motorsports and events. They are there to enforce the rules, investigate incidents, and impose penalties. So what does that really mean? It means that the stewards are going to be the people who are going to look at incidents, find out, was there an infringement of the regulations? And if so, what are the penalties and standard penalties that may be assessed? So if you put it in very common terms, we're kind of the judges of what's going to happen. And we are also going to, as I said, assess penalties if we feel that they're necessary. When I say that stewarding is very important from the very, very top ranks of the sport, in the International Sporting Code, they have descriptions of the roles and responsibilities for a number of the different officials. For example, race director is approximately half a page. Marshals are half a page. Scrutineers are a quarter of a page. The stewards are 3 pages of the International Sporting Code, and there's another 15 pages for the steward procedures. So that just shows you kind of how important stewarding is at all levels of competition. And again, within CASC, it's a road race, ice race, time attack, and slalom. All of these disciplines require stewards in order to hold an event. The decisions that stewards are making are there to ensure that the competition is being run in a safe manner and that the rules and regulations are being upheld and being done so in a very consistent way. And that's the role that our stewards have. They have to work independently from the organizers because they need to have that a sense of impartiality, because when I'm saying that we are there to uphold the fair competition and the sporting integrity, it does mean that we have oversight over not just the competitors, but also the event, the organizers, and other officials. And so by making sure that we have this one step removed from the operations of an event, we maintain our neutrality and impartiality on decisions that may impact groups that are not just the competitors themselves. So in our general competition regulations, again, the steward role applies to all of the CASC-OR disciplines. Sometimes some of the specifics about how they interact with with the competitors and how they may interact with some of the other officials, that may differ from discipline to discipline. But in the end, the common theme is that the stewards have the supreme authority, and we are the only ones delegated with this authority for the enforcement of the regulations. So roles like the clerk of the course or a race director, in the sense of like the Formula One race director, they are there for the operational side, and they are there to ensure that the event is being held safely and on schedule, and that you've got the right, they've got the resources that they need. But it's only the stewards that have the authority for the enforcement of the regulations, with a few small caveats that may come up, such as in road race, we have a few judge of fact penalties that can be assigned from the clerk instead of the stewards. But for the most part, the stewards have the duty for the enforcement of all the other regulations. Something else, and it kind of ties back to what I said before, that we have to be a step removed from the operations of an event, is stewards are assigned to an event by CASC-OR. They represent CASC-OR. They report to CASC-OR. They do not report to the event. They do not report to the clerk. They do not report to the race director, and they do not report to the organizer or the secretary of the meet. They report to CASC-OR, and we are there to ensure that the event is being run to the standards that are required by CASC-OR, and that it is being run safely. And the stewards have the ability to step in if they feel that maybe safety standards are not being followed, that they can step in, and if necessary, they have the authority to stop something if they feel that it is not safe, again, to protect the interests of CASC-OR. Stewards must not have any other duties. We can't be the registrar. We can't be a clerk and a steward on the same weekend, again, because we have to have that step removed from the operations of the event. Are there any questions about what I've covered so far in terms of what are the stewards? And then I'll get into a little bit of the details about exactly what does the general competition regulations say? Anyone? Okay. If not,
Richard,
then yes.
Could you probably explain how many different levels of steward license we have?
Okay, yes. So there is a full progression licensing, and it goes from the very entry level all the way up to theoretically up to FIA. So in CASC-OR, we start with a B license, is my understanding from memory. I don't think we have a C license, but I think we start with a B license. That's kind of an introductory license. Anybody that takes this course and then submits their, I have information about the licensing at the end, and submits their license application, would get a B license. And then there's a progression. So after they've worked so many events, then they can upgrade to an A license, which is the highest license that we have here in CASC-OR. As I said, it's a ladder that sounds like a step, that doesn't sound like a ladder, but above CASC-OR, you can also have national licenses that are issued by ASN Canada. And above that, there are a limited number of FIA international stewards licenses, all the way up to a super license. So people may be familiar with drivers who have a super license to compete in, for example, a world championship like Formula One. The same actually applies to officials. It's not well known, and it is covered in this ladder from the national to the international level is also covered in the FIA International Sporting Code, Appendix V, and it's V for volunteer. So within Ontario, again, we would start with a B license and then move up to an A license. Within road racing, for example, we'll typically have multiple stewards available on a weekend. Some of the other disciplines may have smaller resource requirements. I know in ice race, we'll typically have just one steward unless we feel that there's some reason that we need to hold a multi-person hearing, but we'll have one steward. And but for road racing, where we are going to have a pool of stewards, we're going to have hold hearings and so forth. We'll typically assign a chair of the stewards, chairperson, for the event, and that person needs to have an A license. But otherwise, if you have a B license, you're a steward, and we welcome you to come to the track or to the event and participate. Any other questions? And let me pull up, I have the GCRs here. GCRs. So I'll make this a little bit bigger. So as I said, we have these general competition regulations, and they apply to all of our disciplines. And the one that covers, here, let me go to this. So we have stewards of the event. And let's talk a little bit about section 5.1.2, which are the duties and the powers of the stewards. And we have a list of what they are. So they're going to be, the stewards are going to adjudicate any protest or dispute arising from an event subject to the right of appeal. The appeals are something that I'll handle at the very, very end. It's not really something that is currently handled by the stewards. It's handled by a board that would be appointed by CASC-OR, but may include people who are stewards, but it's not required. And they are, in most part, the only ones that are permitted to impose any penalty in the regulations. There may be a few exceptions. As I mentioned earlier, in road race, I know that there are 3 penalties that can be assessed by a clerk, but otherwise, for the most part, it's only the stewards, and any differences between that have to be explicitly documented about where there may be others. The stewards may also intervene to prevent any participant, including officials and volunteers, who may be considered in any way dangerous or unsafe. That could mean anything from somebody who is being abusive. We can remove that person from the event. The stewards can remove that person from the event. And it may be something like there is a concern that somebody may have been consuming alcohol or some other legal substance that we feel would threaten the safety of them at a motorsports event. Of course, as we all know, motorsports is dangerous, and we need to protect people from injuring themselves or other people. So we also have the ability to step in and prohibit anybody from participating any further in the event, and we can even have them removed. Yep. As I said earlier, we adjudicate any dispute rising from the event. In road racing, that's typically going to be a request for action from the clerk of the course. So the clerk of the course is the person that is operating the event. And if they have a report from a coroner marshal or perhaps from the scrutineer or from timing, maybe it's somebody out on a course, like if it's auto slalom, somebody is out on the course and says that they think that something has happened, a cone's been knocked over that wasn't reported, or in time attack, a common one would be if one of the participants went off course, dropping one or two wheels off course. We'd get the report from the clerk, and then we'd start the investigation and look into the dispute and rule whether it was an infringement or not, and then what penalty, if any. And as I said, the stewards can step in at any time and stop a competition, abandon or postpone it. One of the examples that I can think of, probably it's close to 20 years ago, everyone showed up at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, which was known as Mosport at the time, Sunday morning, and it had snowed, and nobody was prepared for the snow. There was snow on the course. The marshals and other volunteers were not prepared for the snow, and it just was not safe to run. And so the event was the Sunday running was actually canceled. So these are sorts of the things that stewards can step in. And if there's some reason why a competition needs to be stopped, we do have the authority to do so. The last one, this one is just if you have to replace a steward, maybe they have a family issue they need to leave and deal with, or they're not feeling well. We can deputize someone, and that may include, for example, taking a competitor and asking them if they can be part of, for example, a hearing. I have done that in road racing where we have somebody who has a steward's license, but is typically supporting a race team in the paddock for GT. I can only use that person because we need to be impartial. I can only use that person for investigating issues that may be in an area that is unrelated to anything that they're doing. For example, if I have somebody like a driver in the GT sprints, the sedan sprints, they may be asked to, we may deputize them and ask them to help look at an issue with Formula 1600. There's no overlap between Formula 1600 and the sedans. That may be common for other things, such as in auto slalom, maybe you deputize somebody that may be in a different run group or a different class to help adjudicate something in a totally unrelated area. Just and of course, if there's anything that is beyond just a penalty where somebody is being unsafe, being reckless, or in any other way jeopardizing the event, we can also ask that we refer the matter to CASC-OR, where they can create, for example, a driver review. So if somebody has a pattern of behavior where they are a danger to themselves, we can ask that a driver review be held. It can also be an official review if an official is not performing their duties. So again, these are very common across all of the disciplines. As you've seen, there's nothing here specific about road racing. These are for all of them. Let me go back to the slides. So as I said, steward role applies to all of the disciplines. Some of the specifics may differ, how they interact with different officials may differ, but the responsibilities are the same, and they're listed in the GCRs as opposed to the discipline regulations. I think I've covered everything there, and I've gone over the GCR. So let's talk a little bit about, right, so I've talked about the duties. I've taken some training on being a steward through FIA, and Gary Connolly, actually he was the chair of the Formula One stewards. He had identified stewards as one of their duties is to quell disputes, and that's an odd phrasing. And he explained it that quell in this case meaning to stop the dispute. We're not there as stewards for dispute resolution. We are not there to mediate between two parties. We're there to end a dispute, to quell a dispute. And it doesn't mean that the differences between the parties are going to be resolved. It just means within our regulations, we have said that this is an infringement. We should identify why that we, as stewards, feel that it is an infringement, and our decisions will end the dispute. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the parties involved are suddenly going to, hug each other and go, "Okay, yep, that ended it." But that's not the point. We are there. It is a great responsibility that we have, but we are there to end that particular dispute over an alleged infringement. When we start to handle an investigation or handle a protest, once that starts, it is a compulsory process. That means that even if the person that is involved in the investigation, the alleged infringement, even if they don't want to participate, it doesn't matter. If we feel that there has been an alleged infringement, the stewards have that duty to continue the investigation, even if the party does not wish to participate. It doesn't matter. If there's an infringement, the stewards are there to do the investigation. As I said, it is not a mediation between parties. We are there to, as I said, assess whether an infringement has occurred and what is the appropriate penalty. So this compulsory nature means that we have a heavy responsibility as stewards. And I hope that everyone understands that if they wish to become a steward, and I certainly hope they do, having that responsibility is a sense of fulfillment. You are taking on a leadership role at an event, and I know I myself feel that having that responsibility, it is a great responsibility. But as I said, I take a lot of enjoyment, not because I want to assess penalties, but because I am there. I understand that I am there for the good of the sport. And it takes some broad shoulders, but I hope that everyone likes that kind of a challenge. Another duty of the stewards, it is also written in the GCRs. I want to go back to the GCRs, is we also should report back to CASC-OR at the conclusion of the event a report on that may differ from discipline to discipline, but for the most part, it should be how did the event go? What were the protests? What were the different penalties that were assessed? Were there any appeals that were being notified? What were any of the fines and fees collected? Incidents into any of the injuries, and general comments on the organization of the event. So we do that for every ice race. We do it for every road race event. And I'm curious about the other disciplines. Maybe some of you can tell me, do the other disciplines also send in a steward's report? The reports that we do for ice racing and for road racing are posted on the CASC website. Sorry. So, for example, road racing, if I go to, I think it's events, no, forms, information. So we have the stewards reports. They're all posted here for both the ice races and the road races. Anyone from Time Attack or Solo?
Giuliano Trado from Ontario Time Attack. We also create a
Yeah.
report. If there's a incident and the steward creates a report, sends it to CASC as well.
Okay, great. Okay. Um, let's talk a little bit about what are the qualities and values of a good steward. The stewards, of course, being as we're effectively the judges of during the event, we need to be impartial, fair, and unbiased. And that means not just when we're doing the investigation, but we need to be seen by all of the competitors and the officials as being as holding these particular traits. And what does that mean? It's not just that when you're sitting down to hold a hearing and you've got the alleged infringer in front of you and you're discussing it, that you're not bringing your biases like, what kind of a jackass move was that? That kind of bias in a hearing is going to ruin your reputation as a steward. So you want to always be open-minded. You need to be fair and bring no biases. But it's also outside of the hearing that you're not grumbling under your breath about, oh, that competitor just doesn't know what they're doing. That reflects on everything that we're doing. Because if people think that you're biased, their opinion of your decisions is going to be very low, and their acceptance of your decisions as a steward is going to be very low. So we need to be seen being fair by a reasonable person in full possession of the facts, meaning there may be times where we assess a penalty as a steward that at first glance, people go, well, why did you assess that? But if you can delineate, well, it was because of this reason and this reason, they were mitigating factors and this particular thing, or the driver was under suspension, so the penalty was more harsh than our minimum recommended penalty. Again, if somebody is in the full possession of the facts, then they should be able to say, yes, that was a fair and even decision. As I said, it's also about being seen to be fair. If you're not documenting your decisions well in a steward's hearing, because we should have a steward's decision document that comes out of the hearing, you should detail the reasons why you may have assessed the penalty. You want to maybe have the reasons why you feel it is an infringement. Sometimes it's very clear cut. Sometimes it's as easy as, yes, the driver admitted to a pass under yellow. Okay, well, the driver admitted it, and so we're assigning the standard penalty. But sometimes things are a little bit different. I've had Stewart's decisions that went well over a page of description why we had arrived at a particular decision and assessed a certain penalty. So that's what I mean about being seen to be fair. If you just pronounce your decisions from on high and nobody knows why you came to those conclusions, it can be very difficult. That's why you want to be very open about why you've come to certain decisions. Have good communication and interpersonal skills. You're going to be interacting with drivers and teams, other officials. The drivers in particular, you're often dealing with them after they've come off the circuit or off the competition surface, and their adrenaline is going to be really high. You need to be able to deal with them. They may have dealing with some really significant emotions. So being able to communicate about what your questions are, why you feel that something may be an infringement, have good interpersonal skills, and to be able to build that rapport with drivers, with crew, teams, entrants, and other officials as well. Rarely do stewards directly observe an incident or an infringement. it's often coming as a report from other officials. And so this is where you need to be able to interact with other officials. Be strong. Again, a steward's decision may impact somebody's weekend, but remember, failure to failure to deal with a potential issue may ruin everyone else's weekend as well. So if somebody has infringed on the regulations and it's provable, but nothing is done about it, you may think, okay, well, I'm not going to piss off that one person, but you're impacting everyone else that may be their competitor if an infringement is not addressed during that weekend. You impact not just the competitor, but you're impacting everyone else that they were competing against who now feel that something unfair has happened. So again, be strong. There may be people who disagree with you, but if you come to the decision based on the regulations and assess penalties that are in line and consistent, or if they're different, explain the reason why that the decisions are different, then I hope that people will at least accept it. They may not always agree. People have different opinions, but if you can show why you've come to a particular decision, hopefully that would help them. Be open-minded. Try not to prejudge an incident. You need to review all of the evidence first. There have been cases that I've looked at where at first it seemed like, okay, this seems like fairly clear-cut. We have a report from, say, a corner worker of a potential infringement. It sounds like there was contact. But you want to listen the first thing is you need to listen to the participants as they describe what's happened. Look at the video, look at other observers' reports, because sometimes you'll find additional evidence that comes out that that if you went in with a prejudgment that you go, oh, actually, this is different than I originally thought. That's happened to me as a steward a number of times, where you have a report of, say, contact between two cars, and you go, okay, well, you look at the marshal report, this seems fairly clear cut. There was contact. But when you actually start to talk with the drivers, you find out that they were reacting to something that was happening in front of them that maybe the marshal didn't see, or something like that. So try to make sure that you're not, as you get the request for action from the clerk, that you're not prejudging the incident, that you have to review all of the evidence at first. And that evidence may not be available immediately. You may need to take the extra steps and extra actions to say, hey, we need additional report from so-and-so, or, hey, we'd like to have the video of another car or another participant that may provide some context for what happened, or interview another driver that may have been observing from ahead or behind. And the stewards, we need to hold ourselves to the highest standards. As I said, a steward is a leadership role at a motorsports event, and because of the great responsibilities that we have as to assess penalties or prevent somebody from competing, we need to hold ourselves to the highest standards always. And as I said earlier, be open, always be open, be available to the competitors. They may have questions, they may have things that they don't understand. Explain to them, take the time, build that rapport with the competitors or other officials that you may interact with. So a little bit going back to the general competition regulations. So I've talked about the duties and the powers of the stewards. But also in here, we have some descriptions of the penalties, and this includes some generic, I'll call them generic types of breaches of the general competition regulations. And I should say, and maybe I didn't say it earlier, is when I say the stewards are there to enforce the regulations, we're there to enforce the discipline regulations, we're there to enforce the GCRs, we're there to enforce the supplemental regulations of the event, and potentially even something that the clerk or some official of authority has said during the driver's meeting, for example. But there are some that, again, are not discipline specific, such as A bribery or attempts to bribe anyone is a breach of the general competition regulations. Abuse, recklessness, failure to obey an official, unsportsman conduct, abuse of language or behavior, or physical violence. All of these are breaches of the GCRs. And as stewards, we're there to enforce the GCRs, not just the discipline regulation. In this penalty section, if you go through it, we also have, for example, what is the range of penalties that could be documented in the penalty guidelines for each of the disciplines. It could be a reprimand. You tell the person, hey, you can't do this. Maybe that's a good opportunity as well to educate the person about, well, this is why it's a reprimand. This is why you shouldn't do it again, or whatever. We can impose certain fines up to $2,500. More typically, it's much less than that, in the order of a few $100s. We can assign a time penalty, a lap penalty, or a position penalty. We can move somebody to the back of their class. We can say it was a 1-lap penalty, or we can say it's a 30-second penalty added to your accumulated time, whether that's, for example, time attack or slow auto slalom, or it could be qualifying time. Or we could remove a lap in qualifying for road racing or ice racing. So there's lots of different things that can be done with those. We can also put drivers on probation for up to 13 months. And a probation period means that you're under additional observation. If the behavior continues, the penalties that may be assessed could be harsher than the minimum recommended, because you are the competitor or the official is already under probation. We can exclude somebody from the competition, for example, disqualification. And we can also, they can lose accrued championship points if they're going for a championship. And we have, as a steward, I have assessed basically all of those at one time or another. Exclusion from competition, it's more typically because of a technical infringement. The car is non-compliant, and it was a disqualification. And then we can talk about the discipline regulations. So each of the disciplines are going to have their own sporting and technical regulations. The stewards are there to enforce all of those regulations, as well as I said just a moment ago, the supplemental regulations or drivers' briefings and the GCRs. I should have absolutely included GCRs listed here. So it's the duty of the stewards to enforce these regulations. The stewards should be familiar with the regulations. It doesn't mean that they necessarily have the regulations memorized. Nobody does. But rather, because they're just so long, and a lot of them are especially the technical regulations. But you should be generally familiar, and then know how to look up the specific regulations for a particular infringement. When something is brought to you, whether it's a protest or a request from action from a clerk, it should always state, in fact, it's mandatory, it needs to state what is the regulation that you feel has been infringed. So when you're doing the investigation as a steward, or you're holding the hearing, you should review the exact wording of the regulations. So I certainly do that every time I am going to hold a hearing, is I bring open the regulation and I actually read the full regulation, just to make sure that sometimes memory is fallible. We sometimes misremember something, or maybe a regulation has changed and we don't want to accidentally remember the old regulation. You are there to enforce the regulation as written. Now, we are not, however, empowered to rewrite the regulations during the event. The regulations should be the regulations that were there at the beginning of the event, with a few caveats. Maybe there may be, there could theoretically be maybe a change to the supplemental regulations, which are specific to the event. For example, if you need to move the false grid area or the staging area because of a safety reason, then you could make those, again, for safety reasons, you can move those. But if you feel that a regulation is not clear, it's not your duty to rewrite it. You need to interpret it, but instead you should make the recommendations back to the discipline director or the regulations committee. I know that we had an issue in ice race about 2 years ago where there was an issue with studded tires. And the exact wording of that particular regulation was a little bit open to interpretation about what was the manufacturer of the tire, because the studs were being added by the company that was selling them. So do they become the manufacturer of a studded tire if the studs are added later? The regulations were updated later because there was a certain vagueness in the regulations at that time, but we had to enforce the regulations. We had to interpret what we felt was meant by the manufacturer, and then we made an assessment based on that as stewards. But we're not there to rewrite something that we feel that we don't agree with or that is vague. We need to interpret, but we're not there to rewrite it. That goes back to the discipline. And then we can actually take a look at some of the regulations. And I brought some up. What was I going to look at? Slalom. So in terms of slalom, I couldn't find any CASC regulations, but I did find the regulations from the ASN. So I assume these are the ones. And it may be more quite typically in slalom and in time attack that a vehicle is maybe in the wrong class or has the wrong packs, for example. So the slalom, I thought I had written down page 14. Dangerous construction classifications, right? So in slalom, it may be that the vehicle was in a particular class and somebody has protested saying, no, I think the modifications that they've made means that it should be in a different class or different packs. In Ontario time attack, again, that's another very common one. If I look at page 25, right. So again, vehicle classifications, that's a very common one. And page 56 is another one where if there's an unsafe issue or, for example, a driver is missing flags, driver on track conduct, those would be infringements of the regulations. In ice racing, what I have, page 11, no, page 17. Right, so maybe they're ignoring the flags. There's a yellow flag and maybe they didn't, or a yellow light, and maybe they made a pass during that yellow section. So these are the sorts of infringements. But as I said, there may also be technical infringements. If I go to page 11, for example, where we're having discussions about the different tire specifications. And this was one of the ones that we did eventually update. Because of the issue that I said that we investigated earlier. Again, that went back to the discipline director, who then worked with the committee and did update the regulations. But and it also has here clear penalties within the regulations about what happens for an infringement of these. So some of the disciplines may have a penalty guideline, and I know that in road racing, I think that we're looking to maybe have a separate penalty guideline that will help both the stewards and also the competitors to fully understand what are the different possible penalties. Sorry, I have a phone going off nearby. If I go to our actual road race regulations, that would be another place where we do have a list of penalties. So passing in a yellow zone, we have very, very clear penalty guidelines. These are minimum recommended penalties. There may be reasons why you choose to make a penalty harsher or less harsh based on mitigating circumstances. So we have an entire appendix in our road race regulation about the different kinds of infringements and what the penalties would be for each of those. Failure to obey, taking two checkered flags, failure to, driving off course. So we have very clear penalty guidelines that we have, and I think that in road racing we're going to have maybe a separate document. It would not be a binding document, but it would rather be a guideline for what are the different penalties and why we may assess a penalty that is higher or lower than what is in Appendix B. Are there any questions at this point? I've been going fairly quickly. Oh, I want to go back here. I've been going through all of these fairly quickly. Do we have any questions about infringements, penalties, how the regulations and how the stewards work with the regulations?
No, but I have a quick one. How
Yes,
long
please.
is the meeting duration?
How long is this particular meeting?
Yes, sorry.
Or how-
I had an appointment today, and I just want to know if it's,
Yes.
just
I am-
15 minutes after the hour will end, or is this?
It will probably be after the hour, and I apologize. It's because of I
No
got
problem.
stuck in some traffic. I will try to go through it fairly quickly. This is also being recorded, so yes, I see the flashing light. So it's being recorded, and hopefully that we'll make it available through CASC somehow.
Thank you. It happens to all of us, so we understand. I just got to tell the other people
Yep.
when I'll be there.
Working with the different officials. So, as a steward, as I said, we're separate from the organization and the operations of an event, but stewards are going to interact with a lot of different officials during the event, and you need to build those relationships. It's good to maybe even chat with them at the beginning of the event and just sort of introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Stewart, and just wanted to let you know if there's any issues, just let us know. So the clerks are the people who are operating the event, again, making sure that it's on schedule. They're dealing with safety cars or red flags, yellow flags, and so forth. Scrutineers, so they're looking at the cars and they will determine whether they believe that one of the cars may have a technical infringement. Timing and scoring, maybe you may need to request additional information from them, such as a lap chart or some other information. And additionally, you'll interact with them potentially if you're assessing a penalty. Judges of fact, these are people that are observers, and their role is to make certain judgments about things that could be facts. In road racing, those could be the starter, who is a judge of fact for jump starts, or another person on the start tower. We have somebody that would look at blend line infringements. For the other disciplines, it may be a judge of fact for whether a cone was knocked out of, like in auto slalom, whether a cone was knocked out of its position or knocked over. Maybe it was knocked over and then the other tire righted the pylon back up again, or something like that, or something. Judges of fact, they're observers, and they're just stating, I observed this particular fact. There may be reports from other observers, like corner marshals or auto slalom people have gone out as to watch the cones, pit marshals or starters. So you'll interact with all of these, maybe the registrar, for example. Ideally, you'll use written reports from the observers, or as I said, scrutineers. The clerks will have an RFA, a request for action. Use written reports to capture the statements, and that includes from the competitors. Sometimes we've asked the competitor to write up what they feel happened or what they observed. I'm also a steward with the Sports Car Club of America, and for every hearing, we also have everyone that appears before the hearing to also write an observer report. That includes the person who is being investigated, as well as potentially all of the other competitors that we interview. So we have a written record of what was being said. This adds traceability and can be used later should the issue be appealed. And stewards may request additional information from other officials or from other competitors, such as video or photos. I've had trackside photographers provide photos of an incident. I've had video of cars that are behind an incident that provide information, or I've seen, again, video from spectators. And you may request video if you have a video replay system in the control room, such as on a pro weekend at the CTMP. They will have video of the track, and you can do a instant replay of it. So again, build the relationships with the different disciplines. Hearings are typically going to be initiated either by a protest from a competitor or a request from action from the clerk. But the stewards can also act independently, and it's something that I would like to start doing more often in road racing. Is if there's been a significant incident, the clerk will often do the initial assessment, whether they feel that something has happened, but maybe the stewards can act more independently and say, go to the clerk and go, that was a pretty big crash. Do you want us to investigate it, to make sure that there was no infringement? Because the clerk is focused very much on getting the event back onto schedule, or dealing with the cleanup of an incident, or resetting whatever happened. So the clerk is pretty busy with things. So maybe the stewards can initiate. I shouldn't say act independently. We do act independently, but initiate investigations more often. It could be a single steward, such as we have typically in ice race, or in road racing, we'll have a minimum of 3 that will hold a hearing together and assess the thing. And sometimes it may be more than that, especially for training. So in ice race, maybe we'll have multiple stewards so that we can train new stewards, and the same with road racing. You want to interview, or you can interview the different people, the parties, instead of participants, the parties separately or together. But again, read the temperature of the room, and I mean that in a figurative way, of course. Are the drivers coming in already yelling at each other? You don't want to interview them together. You probably want to interview them separately. Have the other person wait outside the hearing room and interview them. Or if they're coming in and you can read from their body language that they can probably talk it openly and discuss it together, and get both sides of the story. Another reason why you may want to do it separately, again, is so that each other don't bias what they're saying. You don't want one participant to hear the story from the other and start making something up to counter what was being said. So if you hear them separately, and that's very common, for example, with a police investigation, you definitely want, if you're going to interview people together, you don't want the hearing to devolve into an argument fest. So that's one of the reasons why most typically you'll interview them separately. After you've gathered all of the evidence that you can, you'll dismiss everyone and hold a private or an in-camera discussion decide whether an infringement has occurred. You, again, review the regulation, and if so, what is the appropriate penalty? Are there any mitigating circumstances? If there's any significant doubt, if you're just not sure that it was an infringement, you may consider finding in favor of the defendant. Again, you don't want to penalize somebody if you don't have enough evidence to prove one way or the other. The level of proof required is not the same as for example, a court trial in an Ontario court. It doesn't quite have that level of beyond a reasonable doubt, but it should be something that somebody in full possession of the facts would come to a similar conclusion, that one person or another had the was predominantly at fault for a particular incident. Clearly document what was the infringement and why the stewards felt it was an infringement, and If you're not using the default or recommended penalty, document why you're not doing it. The decision may be later appealed, so you want to make it clear so that the appeal board has information about what was the thinking process of the stewards. And then finally, deliver the decisions to the parties. Distribute the decision to other officials as appropriate. For example, the clerk, timing and scoring, or the scrutineer. Scrutineer may pull the compliance sticker from the car. Timing and scoring may assess the 30-second penalty in the from the provisional results to the final results. The clerk may need to know that the car needs to start from pit lane instead of from behind a safety car or something like that. Okay. Any questions about that? I'm almost at the end. Okay. What I can do is I can show one of the hearing. It's really good if you're using forms for a lot of this. And I'll show you some of the forms. This is not a hearing report. This is a steward's report, but this is one of the ones that we did for road race. So we have on the second page a list of all the penalties that were assessed, who they were assessed to, maybe some explanations, and how many RFAs were dealt with from the clerk. So we had 13, quite a few that weekend. And here's maybe just an assessment of how the event ran. There were some oil spills. We felt that maybe there could be somebody could review the GCRs for postponing a particular race as opposed to the entire competition, and a recommendation for when visiting series such as an SCCA class was joining an existing CASC-OR class. So that's a report. And did I have... No, I don't. So I was trying to find a hearing report. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a report on my laptop. Let's see if I can go to... Nope. If I can go to... See if I can find at least the forms. Here we go. I'm looking for the RFA. Yeah. So here's kind of a report, a steward's hearing report. So we've gotten a type of hearing. It was an RFA. This would all be filled out by the clerk and then given to us. Who are the board members? Who else was maybe in attendance? Whether it was maybe a scrutineer attended. And then the judgment. This is where you would document why you felt it was an infringement and what the penalty should be. And then the decision was given to, and then if they appeal, you may want to say the decision, there was an intent to appeal, chair of the hearing, and the person that received, the person that was the accused, as it were, the defendant. So every discipline may have their own. Yes.
Are you sharing this on the screen right now, or can you share it on the screen with Matt?
Thought I was. Okay, so let me open it.
Yes, we could see it, Richard.
Oh, you could see it. Okay,
Okay.
so I've opened it. I hope it's there. So again, the top would be filled out, for example, the RFA or something, and then this is where you put the judgment. I'd certainly be open-minded to using more electronic forms, but it still seems at this point that written with a pen still seems to be maybe the easiest way to distribute information. And not everyone can type on a laptop as fast as they can write with a pen. So it may be easier at this point to continue using paper forms, but certainly it would be, I think some of the forms are already available in electronic form. Just trying to see, what else do I have? Form. No. Just trying to see if I had another Stewart's reports. No. And I will show, I hope you can all see the CASC website. We have under forms. So again, if you go to racing, I know it's in road racing. I'm sure it's in all of the other disciplines. Under forms, here's where we have the forms. So the requests the clerk's request for action, an appeal, notice to appeal, steward's hearing report. Actually, this is probably the newer version here. Oh, it is the same. Okay. So if you go to the CASC website and go to forms, that's where all of these would be found, steward's forms. So you'll find examples of the forms that we use. And forms are very important because it's going to make sure that you're providing all of the required information through checkboxes, and even all the way up to FIA. So Formula One, they have a series of forms. Every steward's decision has the exact same form. Every protest has the same form, and so forth. So it's very important to help us with consistency for everything that we're doing. If there's no other questions there, I'll just go on. I'm almost done. I'll just talk about licensing and a couple of interesting quotes. Two that I felt that I wanted to highlight here. The first is from Abraham Lincoln. No law can ever be framed that will cover every specific application or answer every possible question in a document of any reasonable length. Meaning, sometimes the rules can't cover every possible scenario. You need to be the stewards as in the guiding leadership of the sport. And if the regulation doesn't say that it's an infringement, then it's not an infringement. Again, you can't possibly cover every possible scenario. So look at the regulations. If you feel that they can be improved for clarity, please submit that information. But if you covered every possible scenario, our regulations would be hundreds and hundreds of pages long. So try to be, keep in mind the sport itself, what is fair. You need to have that sense of what is fair to do. Another one is actually from the Colorado Supreme Court. We're mindful of our solemn duty to apply the regulations without fear or favor and without being swayed by public reaction to the decisions of the regulations that the mandates that we reach. So meaning you want to be strong in the face of there's a lot of issues today with things like social media. You need to maintain your integrity despite what may be said. And remember that the abuse of officials or any behavior like that is not tolerated and can be sent to CASC for disciplinary hearing. That includes social media posts or anything like that. Not everyone is going to agree with what you have, with the decisions that you've made, but so long as you apply them and follow the regulations consistently, explain the reasoning behind the decision, the competitors should respect the stewards and respect their decisions. But again, we need to be strong in the face of, unfortunately, a lot of social media issues. Applying for steward's license. So as I was preparing these slides, one of the things that I realized is that the way that we are going, the way that we have the application is to use the CASC-OR manual policies, but it's very road race centric, and it may be something that we need to update. I think the manual of policies, Appendix A, and I will show you that in just a moment, it should probably be reviewed again. It was last updated in 2012, so 13 years ago, and I think that we probably need to update it. So what we need to do is, first of all, have an introduction to what is stewarding. The second one is reviewing this manual of policy Appendix A, and I'll get to that in just a second. There are pages that cover the training requirements of the stewards. There is an exam, but again, the exam is very road race centric, and I think that we need to be more open-minded. Maybe we need to have alternatives for time attack stewards, ice race stewards, and so on and so forth. But there is a written exam. It's very, very simple from Appendix A. And finally, you go to the member site and make your application for the stewards B license. So what is this manual policy? The first thing I will do is I will show you how to get there. Under About CASC-OR in the web, there's policies and bylaws, and then there is policy appendix A, education and training. So that's how you get to it. 2012, so it's 13 years ago. If I go to that document here, so starting on page 9 is the curriculum for a race steward. Again, it says race steward. We need to maybe make something more generic to provide something for all of our disciplines. What are the things to look at? Again, we've already talked about the GCRs, the race regulations. There is a steward's guide. It's in the process of being updated, and I will make that available to everyone that's on this training today. It's a description of what the stewards do operationally, how they work. The judicial role talks about hearings, protests, penalties. Appeals, as I said, don't go to the stewards, although the notice to appeal may be delivered to the stewards, but the actual appeal is through CASC-OR. And as I said, the written test is 5 questions. Open book, take as much time as you want. The answers can be, you can write a Word document or a PDF or text file, or it can just be an email. Some of these are fairly generic, yeah, so if you want to go through that, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, because I really want more stewards and I want to make it easy for people to obtain their steward's license. So yeah, that's the process. Right. Oh, I guess this is kind of a duplicate. The steward's room is always open. So at CTMP, it's in the media room of the control tower. So it's in the basement, as it were. Feel free and come by, say hi, see how we operate, and discuss more about what stewards do. As I said, it's a very fulfilling. It has a lot of responsibility, and if you're somebody like me, I actually kind of like that. I like the challenge, and again, it's a leadership role, and we're looking for people to be leaders in motorsports. And finally, look, we definitely need more stewards. It's been a challenge to get more stewards for the disciplines that I work with, ice racing and road racing. And perhaps it's the same in Ontario time attack, auto slalom. And we used to do karting, and I think TSD, time, speed, distance rallies, are also still under CASC, not performance rallies. So we need a lot of stewards. Again, this is an introduction. This can bring you to a lot of places. We have stewards in Canada that are one of the stewards for the Formula One race in Montreal. And we also have, for example, F1 Academy requires 2 national stewards from ASM Canada. So getting your B license is just the first step on a long ladder that can get you to the very highest ranks in motorsports. And it's a very interesting, challenging leadership role that stewards have. So thank you all very much for coming. This recording will be edited down. There's a few pauses, so I'll cut it down and share it and post it. So open it up. Are there any questions from anybody about what I've gone over today? I will also make these slides available.
Yes. Hello, Eric DePauw here. I have a question about the GCRs.
Yes.
I found 2 versions, 2017 and 2025, on the CASC site. Is there a newer version than March 2025?
No, March 2025 is the newest version. And I will go in and look and see if there's any that still are, any pages that are still showing the 2017 version, because I can easily go in and I won't delete it, but what I do is unpublish it from the site. So it still is there and you can search for it, but it won't show up if you go to the regulations areas. So yeah, I'll update that. March 2025 is the latest.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a quick question. I mean, I think I know what the answer is.
Yep.
So, stewards generally, as you said, they have to remain impartial, and also they can't fulfill another function within the event.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
they don't necessarily have to be in a box hidden somewhere. So, for example,
No.
and I want to just get a confirmation for this because I know this is a lot of non-road racing things. But for example, in autocross, when somebody knocks down a cone, they call down on a radio and they say, "Hey, car number this, they knocked this cone." There's a person that writes that information down and keeps that log. That person could effectively be a steward for the role that they're filling because they're logging those penalties, correct?
I would think so. They're not the ones that are observing it. It's been a long time since I've been in auto slalom. And when I was doing it with the Motorsport Club of Ottawa, we didn't really have a steward at the time. So things have changed in the 25 years since I was doing autocross or auto slalom. But I would think because they're just recording what was being reported, that would not be a conflict. Because it's not an operational, they are just recording what somebody else has observed.
Yeah.
Which is in the end what a steward's hearing is as well. And if I may go further into what you were saying, I would like to see the stewards, and again, I mostly work with the Road Race Summer Program, is have the stewards spend more time in the paddock talking to the competitors during the event. We have stewards I know that go to different corners to observe what's going on and report back. So we definitely have 3 or 4 of our stewards will do that, but I want them to be in the paddock. I don't want this separation, and unfortunately, as much as the CTMP is a fabulous track, the race control in the area where the stewards are and hold their hearings in the media center is very much removed from the paddock. It's a little bit better at some of the other tracks, Calabogie, Shannonville, where those areas are much closer to the paddock. But I'd like to see the stewards walking and talking to the competitors during the event and finding out what are their pain points and understanding and getting to build that rapport. I don't want it to be this us versus them feeling that when people come see the stewards that they think that they're going to be thrown in jail or something. We love the sport. That's why we're doing it. That's why we're volunteering so much time, is we love this sport and we want to show it to the competitors and the officials that we interact with. So get out, talk to the competitors, work with them. And then, yes, there will be a time where you have to hold a hearing and you have to make some tough decisions, but build that rapport early. And I'd like to see us doing more of that. Any other questions, comments?
Richard, I just wanted to mention something. So when a competitor comes up to a steward and says, "Well, I think car number 22 is running an illegal modification," I just want people to be clear that that's not a submission of or a declaration of a protest. So the steward should then say, "Are you protesting car number 22?" And if so, there's an official channel to do so.
Yes.
So we have lots of that happening where people just nonchalantly mention something, and that's different than an actual protest.
Yes, a protest needs to be written. It needs to be written, and there is a protest fee that needs to accompany it for it to start. I think in most disciplines, from my reading of the regulations, it looks like everyone has a person that is defined as the clerk of the course. You could have an inquiry to the clerk, who may then ask a scrutineer to look into something. As opposed to the person coming to the stewards, they should probably go to the clerk. But yes, if they need to, because there's no guarantee that the clerk may ask the person the scrutineer to initiate a teardown of something. But if the competitor wants to be sure, then yes, it needs to be a written protest and it needs to be accompanied with a protest fee. So if I go to the GCRs, and protests. So it's very clear in our GCRs about the protest process. It needs to be submitted. It is addressed to the stewards. It often will go to the clerk and then the clerk will deliver it. But if they deliver it straight to the stewards, I think that's okay as well. It needs to, there are certain time limits as well for when that protest can be delivered. And it needs to be accompanied. Yeah, it will not be accepted if it is not accompanied by the protest fee.
Is there a specific value that's written down for protest fee, or is that open to the organization to do it?
It's in the discipline regulations most typically. So for example, in our race regulations at the top of Appendix B, protest fee is $100. So it shouldn't be terribly onerous to protest, but enough that it's not $5. You know, it's.
Well, and something to keep in mind, Giuliano, the example that you just gave people, you approach a steward or even another official and say, I saw this happen, I need something done about it. That's fundamentally different than a formal protest. So the answer that Richard just gave you is the one he has to, because if you want to make a formal process, there's a process to follow. If you've got concerns the way an event is being operated, you've got to approach an official, somebody that can actually do something about it, maybe in a less than official capacity. One of the issues we have with all of our competitors is nobody wants to be ratting out some other guy because they think they're cheating or doing something else. But the benefit to the sport overall is we all have to be seen to be competing fairly and honestly, and just trying to do the best that we possibly can. So don't confuse bringing something to an official's attention as the same thing as a protest. Fundamentally, they're different things. Sorry to take that in a different direction.
Yeah, that's good.
So just curious, Ted, just to expand on that thought. So if you thought that there was an issue with a competitor's vehicle, would you then go and speak to, for example, the chief scrutineer and say, hey, could you look into that? And then it would fall on the chief scrutineer, for example, to make a decision if they wanted to without it being, quote unquote, a protest.
Yeah, it would depend on the nature of what it is you're concerned with, Kevin. But yes, I would think that if it's a vehicle concern, that the first person you'd talk to would be either the competitor, if you're not comfortable doing that, would be somebody in scrutineering, because there are technical fellows, and it really is it's a question of fact or a judgment of fact if a vehicle either complies or doesn't comply with the rules. Yep. I like to look at all of this as the officials at the event are our police force. I mean, good or bad, they're the people that are interacting with the public. The stewards are the courts. And so you could see a judge in the street and say, Your Honor, I'd like you to do something about this. The judge isn't going to do it because that's simply the way the system works.
So I think, Giuliano, to that effect, I think that one of the things that we have to look at is getting the good information into the competitors' hands so that they understand how the process works. Exactly. During the event, so that it's clear and transparent, and that they understand that, hey, if you have this suspicion or this thing, this is the avenue that you go. And so while, and just if they have that, then they have some guidance.
Yeah, thank you for that.